Somewhere along the line, a strange thing happened. An agency built for surveillance, strategy, and cold calculation started paying attention to something most people file under spiritual, not because they suddenly became mystical, but because certain experiences kept showing up with a consistency that made them hard to ignore. Out-of-body perception, remote viewing, time behaving like it wasn't a straight line anymore. And sitting in the center of it all was something called the gateway process. Now picture this for a second. A process that doesn't involve pills, or machines, or years in a monastery. Just sound, breath, focus, and a very specific kind of internal training. The Monroe Institute called its core tech Hemi-Sync, short for hemisphere synchronization. And the simple idea behind it is almost suspiciously elegant. The brain has two halves, each with its own style of thinking, and most people live their whole lives with those halves working a little out of rhythm. Like two musicians playing the same song, but never quite landing on the beat together. So Hemi-Sync uses binaural beats, two tones, one in each ear, slightly different. The brain doesn't hear two tones the way you'd expect. It perceives the difference between them as a third beat, and then something wild happens. The brain starts to follow that beat, frequency following response. Not mystical, not a metaphor, just biology doing what biology does when it's gently guided. And when the two hemispheres start syncing, focus changes. Attention stops leaking in every direction. A psychiatrist named Dr. Stuart Twemlow described how Hemi-Sync can concentrate the brain's energy output, and one of the Monroe Institute trainers used a metaphor that sticks. An ordinary mind is like a lamp, light everywhere, scattered. Under synchronization, the mind becomes a laser, coherent, tight, directional. A lamp helps you see what's near you. A laser cuts through distance. Here's where things get interesting. The process doesn't just aim for calm or clarity. It's designed to change the state you're operating from. Because if reality is something you experience through consciousness, then changing consciousness changes what reality even means to you. And once you start thinking like that, you begin to see why the CIA would care. Not because it's cute, because a focused mind that can reach beyond normal limits isn't just personal growth, it's power. Now, no one's asking you to believe anything yet. Just keep following the thread, because the next step isn't about floating out of your body or seeing the future. It's about resonance, about learning that your body isn't just a chunk of matter walking around. It's a tuning fork, and it's been vibrating your whole life, whether you realized it or not. Resonance is one of those words that sounds poetic, but it's actually painfully practical. Put two guitars in the same room, strum one string on the first guitar, and if the second guitar has a matching string, it'll start humming back, quietly but unmistakably. No hands touching it, no magic, just vibration and sympathy. Human beings work like that too, except most people don't notice because the room is invisible. Gateway training leans into this with something called resonant tuning. And yes, this is the part where humming shows up. Sounds almost silly until you try it. A low hum in the chest, a vibration in the skull, something loosens, something settles. The point isn't the hum itself. The point is what the hum does. It takes your scattered energy and gathers it, like calling your attention back home after it's been wandering for years. Then comes the energy conversion box. Again, simple on the surface. You imagine a box and you put your worries in it, your unfinished tasks, your resentment, your anxious loops, the mental noise that normally rides shotgun in your mind all day. And look, anyone can visualize a box. The difference is intention, because when you do it seriously, you're training your psyche to stop clinging to chaos like it's a comfort blanket. After that, the energy balloon, a protective sphere you build in your mind, starting at the crown of your head, cascading down, wrapping around you. Some people think of it like armor, some think of it like a glowing membrane. Either way, it's a boundary. And boundaries matter when you start exploring inner space, because inner space isn't always tidy. Your own mind holds memories, fears, old thought forms, and all sorts of residual emotional weather that can distort perception. Now add one more piece, the Earth itself. The gateway process talks about aligning bodily resonance with the Earth's electromagnetic field around 7 to 7.5 Hz, often connected to the Schumann resonance, sometimes called the Earth's heartbeat. Whether you take that as literal or symbolic, it's a powerful image. Your nervous system remembering it belongs to a larger rhythm, like a child falling asleep to the sound of a parent's breathing. You don't force the calm, you sync to it. And when coherence builds, when mind and body stop pulling in opposite directions, something opens, a different kind of awareness, not frantic and mental, but wide and quiet. This is where the holographic idea enters, and it's not just some New Age poster. Carl Pribram suggested the brain may generate experience like a hologram. David Bohm spoke about reality being folded and unfolded, like the world you see is the surface pattern of something deeper, like a fabric with hidden stitching underneath. Here's a metaphor that helps. Think of reality like a giant living library, but you've been reading with a flashlight that only illuminates one sentence at a time. Hemisphere sync and resonance are like turning on the overhead lights. Suddenly you don't just see one line, you see shelves, rows, sections, context. And once you start seeing context, you naturally ask, if the world is a hologram, if every part contains the whole, could consciousness learn to read more than what the five senses hand it? Good, because that question is the doorway into focus states, where the process stops being a nice meditation routine and starts behaving like a map into non-ordinary reality. Gateway doesn't throw you into the deep end right away. It walks you down a staircase, step by step. Focus 10 is the first big threshold, and it gets described in a phrase that feels oddly familiar once you experience it. Mind awake, body asleep. Think about lying in bed at night, right on the edge of sleep. Your body is heavy, breathing slows, yet the mind is still clear, watching, like sitting in a parked car with the engine off, still fully aware of the world outside. From focus 10, the process moves to focus 12, expanded awareness. This is where people start reporting something subtle but profound. The boundary of me softens, not in a scary way, more like the walls of a small room sliding outward, turning into a wide open field. Inner imagery becomes sharper, intuition becomes louder. Insight arrives in these strange, complete downloads that don't feel like thinking, they feel like remembering. Then focus 15 and focus 21. And this is where the language gets bold, because the experiences get bold. Focus 15 gets associated with moving through time, not as memory, not as imagination, but like tuning into another channel. Focus 21 goes further, beyond time-space, where reports include glimpses of future possibilities. Not fortune-telling, more like sensing the shape of a river ahead by feeling the current now. To explain why anyone would even consider this scientifically, the gateway material starts pointing to physics concepts, like Planck's distance and the idea that at extreme oscillations, energy clicks out of time-space during the tiny rest moments between cycles. That's a weird sentence, yes. But here's an everyday version. Imagine a movie made of frames. Between frames there's a tiny gap, a flicker your eyes don't notice. Now imagine reality has something like that too. Tiny rests, where the usual rules loosen. If consciousness can synchronize and accelerate into coherence, the theory suggests it could ride those gaps the way a surfer rides a wave. Then there's quantum entanglement. Two particles interact, separate by huge distances, and still respond to each other instantly. No delay, no travel time, almost like they're not two in the way we assume. Some thinkers, like Itzhak Bentov, speculated that this communication happens during those click-out moments, outside the normal cage of time-space. Tachyons get mentioned too, hypothetical faster-than-light particles. Whether tachyons exist or not isn't the main point here. The point is the implication. If something can operate outside time-space, instant connection stops being fantasy and starts being a property of a deeper layer of reality. Now bring it back to you, because this isn't a physics lecture. This is about what you've probably felt in your own life. Moments where you knew something before you could explain it. Moments where time slowed during an accident or sped up during deep joy. Moments where a dream felt more real than waking life for a second, and you brushed it off because you didn't have a category for it. Gateway basically says, those aren't glitches, they're hints, and with training, those hints can become doorways. And once the doorway opens, the big undeniable experience that keeps coming up is out-of-body perception, not as a metaphor for imagination, as a report of consciousness operating independently of the body. Which brings us to the part that made intelligence agencies lean in hard. If perception can move beyond physical location, then distance stops being a security measure. Now, out-of-body experiences sound dramatic until you hear how people describe them in practice. It usually starts quietly, deep relaxation, hemi-sync doing its work, the hum of resonant tuning, the energy balloon set like a boundary, then a shift, like the mind loosens its grip on the body. Some describe rolling out, some describe floating upward, some describe a sudden snap into a new vantage point, like awareness moved to a different camera angle. The CIA studied this because if even some of it was real, the implications were obvious. Remote viewing was a central interest, training people to perceive distant locations or information without physical access. Experiments asked participants to travel to a target and report details. Results varied, sometimes vague, sometimes off, sometimes eerily accurate. And the researchers noticed problems too, which is actually important because it suggests they weren't just romanticizing it. One major issue was distortion. When consciousness operates beyond the physical plane, it doesn't always interact with clean present-time data. Residual energy patterns from the past can linger like echoes. Thought forms, intentions, emotions, impressions left by others can overlay perception like smudges on a lens. So a remote viewer might sense something true, but mixed with noise. Another complication, pseudoscopic holographic perspectives. In plain language, sometimes information shows up flipped or reversed, like trying to read a map in a mirror. Training and cross-checking were necessary. Now here's the twist. Even with the intelligence angle, the deeper story doesn't stay military for long. Because once you accept, even hypothetically, that consciousness can move beyond the body, you run headfirst into a spiritual question humans have been asking forever. What are you really? Gateway's framework leans toward a holographic universe where everything is interconnected, and consciousness is a differentiated fragment of a larger whole, universal consciousness. Ancient traditions have been saying versions of this for centuries. Hindu philosophy speaks of multiple planes of existence, lokas. Tibetan teachings describe the Bardo, a state between states. Indra's net describes reality as an infinite web of jewels, each reflecting every other jewel endlessly, every part containing the whole. Even the cosmic egg shows up across cultures, a symbol of creation spiraling inward and outward at once. Judeo-Christian metaphysics can sit in the same room with this too, if viewed through a symbolic lens. The absolute, an infinite, timeless state of energy, resembles the idea of God as omnipresent and eternal. And the Trinity can be read as a metaphor for levels of consciousness, the Father as the absolute, the Son as the conscious projection of that energy into form, and the Holy Spirit as the connecting force, the living field that binds everything together. Not everyone will like that comparison, and that's okay. The point is the echo, different languages, similar architecture. Then comes the most emotionally loaded idea in the whole framework, death. Gateway suggests that when physical life ends, consciousness doesn't vanish. It merges back into the absolute, carrying memory and experience like a drop of water returning to the ocean, not erased, integrated, identity retained, yet no longer generating new holograms because the absolute is described as perfect rest, no motion, no new projection. In exchange, there's unity. There's access to an all-knowing presence. So what's left for here and now? Practical application. Problem solving through the universal hologram, placing a question into expanded awareness and letting answers return as holistic insight. Patterning, visualizing a desired outcome in focus 12 as if it's already real, imprinting intention into the larger matrix. Modern tools echo this. Binaural beats, meditation apps, biofeedback devices, simple entry points, 5 to 10 minutes a day, a quiet space, stereo headphones, breath, a willingness to listen. And something important needs to be said plainly. Power without ethics turns rotten fast. Gateway's tools weren't designed for coercion or harm, even if institutions tried to explore advantages. Using consciousness work to manipulate others, invade privacy, or bypass psychological safety isn't advanced. It's immature. Respect the terrain, respect your mind, respect other people's boundaries. Because the heart of the whole story is not espionage, it's identity. You've been living inside a narrow definition of reality because that's what most people inherit. Gateway quietly suggests you don't have to. So when someone says, the CIA revealed how reality really works, it's easy to imagine hidden files and secret tech and some movie-level plot. That's not the real shock. The real shock is simpler and honestly more personal. Reality might be far less solid than it looks, and your consciousness might be far more powerful than you were trained to believe. A synchronized mind becomes coherent. A coherent mind starts resonating with deeper layers, and once deeper layers come into view, time and space stop behaving like prison walls. Now here's the action part, because this isn't meant to be an interesting story you forget tomorrow. Take one step, just one. Practice stillness with intention. Try a binaural track with headphones. Hum and feel your body settle into rhythm. Use an energy conversion box to set down mental noise like you're putting a heavy bag on the floor. Build a simple protective boundary in your imagination. Then watch what changes, not in fireworks but in small shifts. More clarity, less fear, more inner signal, less outer noise. If an intelligence agency took this seriously enough to study it, the least that can be done is take your own consciousness seriously enough to explore it. Not for control, not for ego, for truth, for freedom, for the quiet recognition that you're not just living in reality, you're participating in it.